Okay, hello, welcome back to the Silt versus A Psalm of Flesh and Change. And where we left things off last time, we were getting perilously close to a confrontation with your group of custodians' rivals, a band of mercenaries known as the Godshrikes, hired by the peninsula to carry out extrajudicial killings against illegal gods, and led by a rather nasty man called Joe Lynch. I say that things are getting closer to a confrontation because when we last left off, while Vitria and Dr. Harrow were heading to the Tanglelands, one of your two active assignments, you were ambushed at a toll booth, attacked by, I believe it was one member of your rivals who attempted to mow you down with a combine harvester, while at the same time, you came into contact with a rather hideous sorrow saint all the way back from one of your very first assignments at the hospital. And his name I've now completely forgotten because we killed him. But yes,
Ignatius, I believe, was
it
his
was
name.
Ignatius, yeah, the rather horrible sorrow saint who was swallowed up by the bellhop quite handily. The combine harvester itself went into the sea along with the, the very much Doof Warrior inspired mercenary who was riding it, Riot, with his flamethrower guitar, a follower of the Distortion Prince. So that's the situation for Dr. Nim and Vitria en route now to the Tanglelands. Meanwhile, the Sleepless Warden, your other active assignment, things there were going quite interestingly. So Nora Kane had abandoned the prospect of playing board games with the imaginary sister that she dreamt up, and was walking down to the center of town, the tower that was once the local pub that had now been transformed back into its original shape as a fortification and defensive position, occupied by the Sleepless Warden, this colossal iron giant-like battle saint. Frank Idle had actually snuck up there to try and figure out what was going on with Sleepless Warden. Had it been awakened accidentally, or was there a purpose behind it? And successfully you answered the first question on that assignment, indicating that in fact it was accidental, that a historian's meddling had in short led to the Sleepless Warden being reactivated, and therefore that the key to controlling it or shutting it down might lie within your grasp. So for the Sleepless Warden, you're now on to your second question. If the Warden was awakened accidentally, what new purpose could it serve? And this is where you can resolve the assignment by working with the community to integrate the Warden into the modern world. That is complexity 6. To remind you, when you do get to the Tanglelands, you've got a complexity 4 opening question. What is the Razor Choir's weakness? So to remind you, in the Tanglelands, the situation is that this group of devotees to the Torn Prince, the god of barbed wire, have escaped into this ever-growing labyrinth of coiling razor wire that is threatening to spread unchecked like rhododendrons across large swathes of the countryside. So complexity 4, your first question, what is the Razor Choir's weakness? And that's how you can remove them as a danger by neutralizing their abilities and handing them over to Seeker Perseforest for court-martial, who we have not met yet. That is where things currently stand. But there's going to be a bit of a additional complication to that, because I think as both Vitria and Dr. Nim, your broken down car by the roadside, staring at the destroyed toll booth where both of you were attacked, a sheet of paper just comes wafting on the wind and just kind of splats against the windshield for a moment, fluttering irritatingly, making quite a lot of noise as if it expects you to pick it up. And curiously, Nora, as you gaze down at the shape of the tower, militiamen surrounding it, hollering up at Frank, who's still trapped there, you catch sight on a lamppost along the road of Wilkins Vigil. The same bit of paper, a colourful, bright poster. You can see rather wonderful tents, what looks like a Ferris wheel, and a clown who is staring directly out of the poster, his eyes wide and bright as if he's looking into your soul, and a grin which looks far too big already, but then spreads into paint white lips, and he smiles out. The caption just reads, "Forget your troubles, visit Big Top." This is our third assignment, something wonderful just outside of town. So, the summary for this assignment. Too many young folk have gone missing. Chores are going undone, hymns unsung. Something has been luring them away without violence. A wind that carries scents of peanuts and popcorn, dung and sawdust, snatches of music, and a giant illuminated upright wheel in a remote and unlikely place. Lights dancing up and down its spokes. Witnesses report seeing a circus parade in motion. Avoiding roads, crossing rough terrain instead, staying out of sight of civilized folks until night falls. They call it the Big Top. The custodians have been directed to a farmer called Ackerman, whose wayward child, Joy, was almost snatched up by the Big Top Circus. And I've just slightly amended the starting question because that relies on you having met Ackerman already. Perhaps, should we leave this until someone investigates it? I think that makes more sense. But yes, this is the rather horrible assignment with clowns, which I'm very much looking forward to doing with you folks. So yeah, it's a lot of fun, so I hope we get to it. But for now, maybe let's just open on Vitria Stahl and Dr. Nim Harrow by the roadside, car smoking, the sound of immense violence still ringing in your ears, and this one poster just flapping on the windshield. You still have your journey move. It's over to you.
We see that Nim is breathing a little heavily from the exertion of what just happened, still fully uncertain about the extent of everything. It all happened so fast, especially that last bit with Ignatius. But if I recall correctly, didn't the bellhop come by, like do some fucked up stuff? Yeah.
He popped out of the trunk / boot and grabbed Ignatius and dragged him away.
Dragged him away or back into the boot of the car?
Into the boot, into the concrete that was welling out of the boot.
And so just like Nim, after a long moment of silence, just slowly, rigidly raises a hand and points at the car and looks at Vitria and says, "Did you know that was in there the whole time?"
Vitria is all covered in splatters of drying concrete and blood, basically, like streaked in it, and she looks and says, "Nobody ever sees the bellhop coming, Dr. Harrow. He's never there until he is."
He opens his mouth, his lips twitch, forming around words. He then closes his mouth, looks at the smoking car, which I believe is just ruined now, right? And without a sound, he just turns and begins to continue walking down the road towards their original destination, just along the side of the highway, just moving forward, completely quiet, deadpan, all of that's being processed.
Think Vitria, I think I owe a verse, so I can just do it now, and then Vitria will sort of limp after Dr. Harrow and try and catch up. But basically, the reappearance, the invocation of the bellhop and the streaks of blood on her hands and concrete reminds her. This is the bleeding revelation, which for the Slag King is narrate a flashback to when you drowned your first sacrifice in sacred concrete. And we see like a half-finished construction site in the rain, girders, rebar girders, and like a forest of scaffolding, and a newly poured foundation, wet and sort of with water puddling in it. And we see Vitria with her brother, who was father's favorite, who's her younger brother Brutus, who's kind of looks quite a lot like her, but he's this kind of, you know, he wears a pashmina and has a swoop, and you know, he's a kind of fashionable type, also part of the Slag King's faith. And Vitria is screaming, "Where the fuck is the money, Brutus? Where is it?" And he's like, "No, no, this is Vitria. It's just a cash flow problem. I'm sure it'll turn up. I'm 80% sure I know where it is. So let's just say that we have 80% of it." And she's like, "No, I worked too hard for this. You're going to fucking ruin us. Father would be spinning in his grave if we knew where his fucking grave was. But you can't do this to me. Not now, you little fucking shit." And she's just walking forward and he's backing off. He's like, "No, no, 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 come on. Don't get angry at me. I don't like it when you look at me like that." And she just like looks at him and says, "I wish you'd just fucking disappear." And then this hand, you know, a long fingered hand with a sort of maroon sleeve just comes over the edge of the platform he's standing on, grabs his ankle and just yanks it, and he falls screaming into the concrete pour, impaled on the rebar. And we just see Vitria looking down with horror, you know, covered in rain, as the blood mixes with the wet concrete in the rain. And she looks back up, and oh, it started to rain on the lonely highway near the toll booth, and she just sort of sighs and swears and just trudges after Nim on the road, like with her shoes sort of making sucking noises on the muddy road.
Wonderful. As the two of you just trudge on side by side in the now pouring rain, increasingly disheveled, your hair just streaming down your face. Anything you want to say to each other, or is this a very much an angry seething in silence moment?
I wouldn't necessarily say it's seething in silence. It's just an exhausted, like, okay, anyway, back to the barbed wire forest. We've been through a lot tonight, so I wouldn't say it's seething. But I don't know what other words might be said. I don't think we didn't find a clue. We didn't like to find what clue we were gonna find last time, did we?
Not yet.
I think it would make sense if whatever it is, we can like find it maybe like along the roadside, since we're gonna be walking anyway.
Yeah, I like that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so if you have any thoughts about that, absolutely.
I think maybe the earth is rusting. There's like puddles of rust welling out of the wet ground as we walk along, you know, bright red kind of oxidized rust just like welling out of the ground as if it's, you know, like bore water. I don't know. That's probably an Australian thing, like heavily mineralized water, but it's just staining everything this red.
Yeah, that's actually really, I really like the iconography of it raining and just everything slowly now spreading red as the rain picks up because of the minerals. That's really cool. So then there's a lot of, it's a very like iron heavy ground then. All right, cool. I'm with it.
I love it. Thank you. Not to enforce role playing, damn it, but if this is your journey move, I guess, is there any kind of any vulnerability you two are sharing, or is it just this kind of silent shared misery?
I look. We like a look. We share a long annoyed, and it just sort of gravitates from mutual anger at each other and slowly runs through a sort of gambit of emotions.
Yeah, I think it's mostly just in the face of that entire endeavor, we persist and we endure. Plus, I got to clear marked by Ignatius, because Ignatius is no longer my problem.
You did already clear it, didn't you? Perfect. Did Vitria clear a condition?
I think I just decided to keep bellhop because the bellhop ride or die with the bellhop. So
valid. Okay, well let's leave you on what I'm sure is going to be a very long and a very wet trudge onwards to the Tanglelands, and jump back very quickly to Welkin's Vigil, where we are in the middle of what the kids call a bit of a situation. Frank, you are, I believe, still at the top of the tower. The Sleepless Warden has communed with you. It is not necessarily a threat to you. Its mighty Ironhead just turning back out towards the dark waters of the channel, watching for incoming boats and submarines. But you can certainly hear the militiamen yelling far underneath you. It's a spy! It's a spy from the Lingers! Don't let her get away! Tommy Bollinger, you might recall, is the leader of the militiamen, toting a shotgun next to his old battered pickup truck, just waiting for you to come down before he really tries to get a shot off. Nora, I think as you're coming down the hill towards this scene, really you have the advantage here. So I'm going to turn it over to you. You can see the tiny shape of Frank at the top of the tower, close to the Sleepless Warden. You can see the small crowd of militiamen below yelling threats. What do you want to do?
I think Nora is taking this all in while coming down the hill rather fast on we discussed this, a bicycle with pink streamers coming off the handles that she borrowed from some poor kid who got like a small stack of coins in return. And as she comes to the bottom of the hill, she's gonna stop the bike, look at the militiamen surrounding the tower, look up at the top of the tower where she can like just barely see Frank and the warden, and just sigh very, very heavily, like lean the bike against a telephone pole and kind of walk towards the riot at the base of the tower, just completely casually, like she doesn't have a care in the world, and stop a few feet away and kind of say loud enough that she can be heard, but not so loud that it's like yelling. And now I have to get her voice right again. Give me a second. It's been 2 weeks. Well, you folks certainly know how to throw a party. I assume that's what you're trying to do, seeing as it doesn't seem like you can aim much better than my grandmother can.
Tommy, who, as we've established, is this kind of huge man, full beard, chore jacket and a black bandana. He kind of just glances at you, then goes back to very vaguely aiming the shotgun in the direction of the tower and just yells, "Angel, get the civvies out of the area, okay? Form a perimeter." And next to him, another woman in another one of these kind of denim jackets. She has slicked back hair and earrings that are very visibly made from shell casings. She just kind of turns and begins to prowl towards you, and she says, "Listen, hun, we've got a dangerous situation here. There's a spy from the Lingers up in the tower. We've caught him. We've got the situation under control, but we do need you to stay well back, please, okay? It's dangerous."
Nora kind of chuckles. A spy, you don't say. Then I think for the first time in this entire campaign, she's going to be taking out the biased badge and kind of shows it to Angel and says, "You want to tell me a little more about that?"
Okay. I mean, this is a bit of a risky move because I think these folks have established themselves as the authority here in town. So I think definitely coming and trying to like establish authority over them comes with a bit of a risk. So I am going to ask you to roll for this to see if the militia are impressed by biased coming in on their territory. So obviously, as indicated, I think this is a bit of a veiled move. What are you afraid is going to happen if Nora loses her nerve or fails to impress Angel here?
Probably that that's not the dice roller I want. That they're gonna just that she's gonna get like ushered off of the scene, and they're gonna start shooting at Frank again, and that someone might actually hit him this time, or hit something important, because I'm sure there's so many things in the tower that if they're shot, that's gonna be bad for us.
It's a really good point, because we said that it's reformed with presumably all of the munitions, maybe some old gunpowder. We got no idea what's up there, and it could definitely be very very explosive. Awesome, I love it. Okay, please give us a roll. I think the obvious one is presence here, but you could make an argument for focus, or even if Nora really wants to, vitality as a kind of intimidation check. It's up to you.
I think probably presence, because she is trying to do some of her best acting right now.
Okay,
The
let's
exact
check
opposite
the
of what she's
old-
like.
How are the conditions?
I mean, it's a 9, so
It's a 9. Okay, let's roll with a 9. So mixed success. All right. Let's come back to that. Let's jump to the very top of the tower. Frank, David, actually, do you want to tell us what is up at the top of the tower? Is there anything explosive? Are there any very old looking, very rusty, very dangerous weapons? What is up here with you and the Sleepless Warden?
I think there's a series of installed battlements here. I think there's perhaps something that looks vaguely like a cannon, maybe a bit more refined than that. But everything here, because it was generated as part of Vitria's work down at the base of the tower, it's all a restoration, or in this case, kind of like an organic growth. So I think there's like a couple of small machine guns that have been kind of, it's like the rebar has bent out of any concrete or supports there to then form into them. I don't even know if they're functional, but they do certainly bear the shape of them. I think there's barrels of, bullets, which again, who knows how functional those may be. But everything up here is set up as if, this was a defensive position, right? And then, of course, behind Frank is this hulking figure staring out to sea, watching for whatever may come. And having already had this a bit of a commune between Frank and the Sleepless Warden, Frank kind of testing the waters as to whether or not, this might be something that he could work with, and getting the sense that maybe if the conditions were right, that could be the case. I think Frank has turned back. There's like one of those, what are they called? Murder holes, right? One of those slits with in between the stone where Frank's kind of like peering down below and seeing the various guns pointed up. And he's just like, well, this is a right pickle. And he's like looking around, like all he's seeing is like pile of guns, cannon, bullets. And he's just like, well, I don't particularly see anything up here of use. Don't suppose you're going to be any help, big guy? No, of course not. Sweet. Wonderful. And you can see like the gears turning in Frank's head. Can I convince them that I'm of no threat? And he like sees, the larger guy cocking his shotgun down below and is like, perhaps not. Can I escape away unseen? And Frank remembers, going in and the only entrance being the one that he'd come in. And of course, that's where everybody is posted up outside. Well, how high up am I? And he's going to peer off the other side of the building. How the tower's reasonably tall, I assume. Are there any other taller buildings around? Or is this kind of like cliff face behind?
I think we established that this was the guard tower, right? So most of the buildings around it are quaint tourist shops. We're talking one story, 2 at most. So at a pinch, maybe you could try and fling yourself down onto one of the rooftops, but it's quite it's at least a couple of floors down from where you are.
Okay. Could we say that Frank still has like a bundle of the kite string?
I was wondering if you'd bring the kites back into play. Okay, well, yeah, you have a bunch of the kite string, very charred and burnt looking from when it struck you by lightning,
Oh
I
yeah,
imagine.
absolutely. I think since he was helping him wrestle with it, well, I think maybe the like winding of it on the handle is still okay because the lightning is transferred higher up to Frank's body and to the body of the kitesmith. I think Frank, there's a two-pronged plan here. He's going to I guess first check to see how long this allocation of rope is. It is not designed to hold the weight of a person though, which is going to be great. But he's going to see if he can't like tie it off to one of the big stone battlements on the back of the tower and kind of just like chuck it a few times off the edge and see if he can like get it wedged like, in a chimney or something down further below. And then he'll try to send a helping hand to create some kind of distraction out front while he, does his best to, I guess, zip line off the rear of the tower. This is the everything goes perfectly conception in Frank's mind. Unlikely this is how it will go down in real life.
Okay, so I mean, since you've established that this is maybe not a good plan. This
Oh, it's
string
an
is
awful plan.
maybe
Yeah.
not gonna carry your weight. I'm very happy to say that yeah, Frank can chuck it down, and maybe the what do you call it? The roller has kind of caught in a
Spindle.
chimney.
Yeah,
The
something.
spindle, yeah. Possibly in the darkness, you can see that it might have caught enough to support your weight, but we're gonna have to see. Obvious question: what are you afraid is going to happen if you fail here?
I think Frank is more worried about his escape getting noticed than he is about any like danger of falling or anything. Frank often does not have enough regard for his own life. But if he gets caught, that's going to be a real pickle, a real trouble.
I'm going to do something very naughty. This is not going to be a veiled move. This is going to be a revelation move because you are blessed by lightning, which means that you zip lining on a kite string, very close to where you were struck by lightning before. I think it is true that lightning strikes twice in the same place. I think that the sky god above you senses how close you are to the clouds and is hungering to feed. So I think it is worse than that. I think getting caught is very likely to happen if you fail here, but it's only half the problem because all of the militia are certainly going to see as Frank coming down the zip line just lights up as the lightning strikes him. The entire sky just glowing as he becomes a conduit for the lightning streaking down through the sky towards him. So I think that is probably what's going to happen here if you fail. To roll for this, I mean, focus, I guess, would be traditional. Any other spin you want to put in it?
I've got pretty much ones across the board except for a 0 in presence at this point. Minus 1 communion, of course. So I'll take a 1 in focus. Why not?
And I will say that blessed by lightning, this will be a disadvantage.
All right. That is a 2 and a 6 on the lower 2 dice because it's 2, 6, 6. Shame I can't have those boxcars, but I will take the 8 plus 1, 9.
9 it is. All right. Let's just jump back to Nora since we're in the middle of an action scene here rather than going to the Tanglelands duo to finish off her interaction. So Nora, it's a mixed success. What are you hoping happens here? Can you describe us how Angel reacts to your biased badge proffered to her?
I think hopefully that Angel has more oh gosh, word in English would be nice. Has more, oh gosh, what do you call it when someone like acts confident, but
Swagger.
yeah, something like that. Like more swagger than sense. She kind of looks at the badge, looks at Nora, just grumbles. Fine, just don't get in our way, and then goes back to the group.
I think that's exactly right. And I think the complication is very much that you hear Angel go, some big city cop coming here to catch our spy. We're doing good out here. Tommy, hey, Tommy, you see this? They've got a big city cop over here. And Tommy kind of turns and look at big city cop. Hey, everyone, look at the big city cop. And you can hear some scattered laughter from the militiamen. I'd like you to take the condition, big city cop, please. And I think as long as you're in town, there's going to be some mockery. There's going to be some eyes on you. The militia are very much going to be out to compete against you. And that right now means proving that they can arrest this spy. So Tommy kind of goes, all right, folks, we've got an audience from the big city. So let's do this by the book, okay? Guns down, guns down. We're going to take them alive. Take them alive, okay? Just ready. I think I see them coming. Just be ready. David, can you describe how this multifaceted plan of Frank's works out?
Yeah, I think when he says you could see him coming, it's because there are various, murder holes and just smaller windows in the fascia of this tower going down. And from the ground, you can see that going along some kind of interior staircase, there is the darkened figure of Frank coming down through the stairs. This is, of course, one of his extra hands. And you hear the heavy wooden bolt being rethrown at the front door, and it slowly creaking open as like a little hand holding a small white flag kind of waves. And anyone who was close enough to the door and could hear over the rain would hear like a quiet very Simlish of him as he kind of pokes his head out hesitantly as he was instructed. And meanwhile, at the top, Frank has lodged the spindle of this bit of kite wire in, he thinks like a chimney or maybe a drain pipe. He's not, it's dark, it's raining, who knows really, but it's stuck, and that's the important thing. And he goes over and kind of winds it around one of the sconces up here at the top or whatever, and gets it secured. And he's like, all right, yeah, looks down below. All right, they seem to be gathering by the front door. Hopefully all eyes down there. I'm just gonna... And he goes over to the edge, and I think he's just gonna put his hands on it because, again, this is kind of foolhardy. And he's gonna ease his body over the walls like, all right, feels good. All right, let's go. And then he just kind of pushes off and immediately regrets not having something else on his hands as the wire like bites into them, and it sags immediately. Like, this was not sufficiently taut for this whole experience. He falls much too quickly. I think if it holds at all the whole way down, just because of the slack in the wire, he like falls, and like the roof tiles of some of these crack under his weight as he kind of topples and rolls across that closest building. Probably pretty battered and bruised, but I think he does like make it onto it. Now, whether or not he's done this without, anybody noticing, tough to say. But he does make it down, and there is the small Frank at the front door with the white flag as well.
Love it. Thank you. I will say that as you hit the roof, so we established in the first paint the scene when you came to Wilkins' vigil that there was a dad who was being rather abrupt with his son. And I think that as you hit the roof, you can hear through the open window below the sound of a child crying, going, "Where's my bike gone? Daddy, where's my bike gone?" "Oh, shut up, shut up. I'll get you another bike. Just stop crying, stop crying." The child, inconsolable for the loss of his bike, just continues to sob. I mean, the complication is going to be this. It's not that you're seen, and although certainly that wire is cutting into your palms, it's not that that inhibits you. It is, of course, the hugging epidemic. So as the other helping hand steps out, he just drops the white flag, comes forward, and grabs Tommy in a massive hug. Tommy's, get off me, get off me, get off me. Arrest him, arrest him. Get his picture for the paper. We're putting this face all over the paper. I want this spy identified, and I want him brought to justice. All right. We'll lock him up in my house, all right? I've got a root cellar. We'll call the judge in the next town, and we'll get a trial going, all right? You got anything to say for yourself, spy?
And they've like got the arms wrenched behind. Oh, it burned up in the.
Yeah, I thought as much. Take him away. And I would like Frank to take the condition on trial for espionage. So obviously that doesn't personally inhibit you, but if you were spotted around town in the near future, certainly people are going to think that you've broken out of your cell. So there's an unresolved issue here where your extra hand is imprisoned and on trial for espionage. Your face is going to be splashed all over the town, and you are very much under threat if anyone spots you in the near future because of that. All right, I think with that rather wonderful victory, let's hop right over again in the pouring rain to Vitria and Dr. Nim as just your squelchy footfalls come to a halt because you can see ahead of you what at first appears to be just featureless heather, perhaps gorse moorland, thorny hedgerows just drifting in the wind. And it maybe takes you a moment just with the wafting stench of infection and rusted metal drifting over you to realize that it is not heather and this is not moorland. This is a vast sea of barbed wire, and it is not blowing in the wind at all, but it is churning the razor wire as if it's breathing. Just ahead of this vast wire-choked anchor, just ringed about on all sides by the swollen, proud flesh of hills, you can make out a small, rickety-looking cabin which has been repurposed into a garrison, and a small group of soldiers just stood on the very edge of the razor wire, muttering amongst themselves, staring out. And as you approach the garrison, I'm just going to throw in a quick paint the scene here, which I'll put out to everyone. As you look at the garrison building, we know that any metal coil, any sharp edge or curve in nature or in technology may be twisted and reshaped into something deadly in service of the Torn Prince. What everyday object in or around the bunker has been turned against its defenders? So what everyday object has been transformed into a relic of the Torn Prince, the god of barbed wire? Over to you.
I mean, any mattresses in the garrison with springs inside of them are now painful beds of shrapnel and jagged metal that just juts out through the cloth and fabric. Yeah.
I think don't know if they exist in the Northern Hemisphere, but in Australia there are these plants called Christmas trees, and they're like parasites that climb up trees and then choke them off. But there's barbed wire doing that to all the sort of, dying trees near the edge of the barbs. Like they've climbed up and sort of co-opted the scaffold, and they're like reaching out, trying to snag passers-by and eviscerate them.
Any like buried telecommunications wires have sort of sprouted so that there's just these kind of branches of barbed wire sticking out of the ground, forming it's looking like tumbleweeds before they like break off and actually become tumbleweeds.
Sticking with the idea of kind of some utility, I think that there's maybe a hydrant or something nearby that's would have normally been connected to local water lines in case of a fire or something. And normally these have some kind of rotary system to actually like essentially uncork it to let the water flow to hook up your lines to. And I think that were someone to either grab one of these by hand or even like try to leverage some sort of tool to twist or turn it, you would immediately notice that like the edges of it are not flat and convenient and easy to manipulate. Instead, they are sharp and would immediately slice your hands open, would immediately start cutting into your tool or what have you. I think it's just this thing that is necessary for emergencies is instead incredibly dangerous to anyone who tries to manipulate it.
That's fucking rad. Love it. Thank you. Yeah, I absolutely. I think as the two of you are approaching, you can see the barbed wire parasitic creepers coiling around the trees. You can see this evidence of hydrant emergency tools, which are just twisting out of control. And as you get closer, you can get a bit of a better look at the soldiers ahead of this garrison, each one of them looking very much like the Michelin Man, heavily padded armor with makeshift welders' masks on their faces. One of them kind of tottering says, "Get the mortar set up. Get the mortar set up. Come on, we gotta keep it back. Keep it back. Come on, man. Come on, man." The soldiers kind of running, set up, mortar, stand back. It fires, launching itself into the sea of barbed wire, and there's just a distant explosion. "Again," the soldier shouts, "Again, again." He turns back. He's got a field radio clasped. He says, "That's right, sir. It's Fubar. Mortars are doing nothing. I told you they do nothing. What we need is backup. Not projectiles. We don't need more weapons. We need backup here now. It's even worse since those freaks went in. Sir? Hello, sir?" And he just looks at the wires on the edge of the field radio, which have done exactly what we'd say they'd do. And just they've sprung out of kilter, twisting and sharpening. And he just goes, and tosses it down in a rage. And that's when he looks up and sees you.
It's walking up like wet dogs, just absolutely drenched. Nim just raises a hand at this waving soldier as he approaches.
He comes forward, and he's not hostile so much as utterly bewildered. And he kind of lifts the welder's mask with a little, and you see his ruddy face, which is absolutely covered in cuts. He goes, "Road's closed."
We are not civilians.
Okay, you soldiers?
No, but we were sent by the military to assist in this matter.
You're my backup.
We are your covert investigative backup.
Okay. And he kind of he drops his mask to shake your hand, and immediately, you can't quite see, but he puts out his thick oven-mitted hand anyway. He goes, "All right, I won't say no to any help at this point. Hank Corden, I'm commander of the border garrison here."
Nim looks at it, his hand while it's jutted out, and like doesn't immediately take it. His eyes flick down to like his own hand for a moment, as if he's questioning if it's safe for him to do so. But ultimately, he does lean into it and just like nods and grabs the man's gloved hand, shakes it firmly, and says, "Dr. Dr Harrow, this is my colleague, Miss Vitria Stahl."
What do you do?
Creates complicated solutions to complicated problems. And it seems to me, Captain, that you have an extremely complicated problem.
We have been informed of the nature of this affair, but perhaps you could walk us through some of the more particulars that have been glazed over. We had a very unfortunate delay getting here and would appreciate being caught up to speed.
Sure. I'll do my best to run you through it. I'm sorry if I miss a few details. I haven't slept in days. Our mattress springs went to shit. Okay. And he kind of turns and points back to the road the way you came and said, "See how that's normal countryside, trees, forest, bracken and such. And now see this, which is the worst fucking place in the world." It started springing up a few months back. We were sent here to try and control it. We have not succeeded. And things have been getting worse. So we had some deserters. We think they were worshippers of this fucking god, the prince. They went in and everything changed. It started spreading faster. It started feeding more hungrily. And so we had Seeker Perseforest. She was sent here. She's an MP. She's military police. She was sent here to track the deserters down. She took half of my men, went in there after them. She hasn't come back either. No one's come back. Not the deserters, not the MPs, not my men. Now it's just us. And when I can get through to HQ, what they tell me is I need to be more aggressive. I need to show the barbed wire who's boss. And I think I'm losing my mind. So if you've got any ideas that don't involve me walking into the worst place on earth in search of deserters, I'd be very glad to hear it.
Yes, I do have such news for you. It is that we will be going into this worst place, so you do not have to.
All right. Well, nice to meet you. I didn't catch your name, miss, but it's fine. Good luck.
We will be going not immediately, but probably after a moment to dry off and rest. As I said, we had a very difficult time getting here. Perhaps there is some refreshments in your garrison that you'd be willing to treat us to, even if it's just clean water. We've walked some distance.
Clean water we have, but the taps have turned, so just be careful. Be careful touching anything in the barracks. That's my advice to you. But you're welcome.
Yes.
I'll be out here.
Has anyone these manifestations? Are they heavily oxidized? Are they rusty? Or are they if they are rusty, I would be concerned for any of the oxidized mineral that would be in your blood.
They're rusty, but we use a sieve, so it's all right.
I see. Very well.
All right. Well, yeah, I'll just be over here doing nothing useful. He kind of trudges back to the mortars and begins shouting at his men to try and fire again. The barracks building stands before you. Even the angular twisted timbers are propped up over the windows have just started to curve, you can see.
Yeah, like once they get in the barracks, we're by a faucet. We see that Nim has taken off his like corduroy like jacket blazer and has like wrapped it kind of partially around his hand just to very cautiously help maneuver the tap to get water for him and Vitria. I actually think we see that it comes out with a slight dirty tint to it from all of the rust in there, even if they do have a sieve. So he, with his back turned to Vitria, holding the glasses, glimpses over his shoulder. He looks down at them, and we see his kind of like air vibrate and glow slightly phosphorescently around his hands and the cups. I'll use Meet the Family to purify toxic material from the drinking water we have poured for ourselves, and you walk over and set it down before Vitria before he says, "So, what the hell are we going to do?"
You believe yet that Van Horn's trying to kill us? Like, what the fuck is this? This isn't a like an assignment. What I agree. What the fuck are we supposed to do?
I do not understand why they would give us this assignment. We have been very busy, and I thought it was explicitly clear to the Bureau that we had more important affairs. This matter with the Sleepless Warden, and now they want us to go on some sort of suicide mission.
I think if I had to narrow it down, I think they're desperate, and the military know that they have no solution to this problem, and we don't just investigate, we pacify and assimilate. So I'm assuming someone in the Bureau convinced them that we might be able to succeed when they can't,
Or
which
they
is
know,
optimistic.
or they know about certain proclivities we possess, and therefore we are assets that are expendable and dangerous in the same.
It was all in the contract. It was all in the fucking contract.
He leans forward a little bit, like on the table, and he says, I saw what you did in Welkin's vigil, Vitria. I saw what happened with the car, the concrete, the steel. I don't know what Frank may have seen in our experiences at that hotel, but none of us are strangers to the miraculous talents of our fellow colleagues. But you and I don't think it is a coincidence that the two most admittedly destructive are the ones who have ended up here. If our bodies are not to be torn apart by the wires of the Tanglelands, then they may very well serve as a catalyst for breaking this blight, and not in a way that might be conducive to us or the people around us.
I think we've been put into play in a game we don't understand, Dr. Harrow.
Oh,
And I think
I understand the game very well, Miss Stahl. The game is called power. It is called bureaucracy. It is called money.
I disagree with you there. Well, let's flip over the fucking board, eh?
Very well.
I think maybe as the two of you stand there with perhaps the only people in the building that aren't going to get iron poisoning, you do just see the door has creaked open and a very young-looking private, kind of with mousy hair. This is the soldier who has got the very worst protective equipment out of the squad in the garrison here. So she's just got kind of a, looks like a muffler hat, a bandana that has been over her face that she's pulled down, her face even more scarred than the captain's. And she is quite literally wearing pairs and pairs of mittens and a thick apron. And she just looks at you and squeaks, "You're our backup?"
Yes, that we are.
Captain Hank said, Private Tennyson, I'm to give you anything you need, any help at all. I can tell you more about the Tanglelands. I'm our resident mappist. That's the technical term, mappist. So if you need any help at all, you need to, find out some stuff. I can share stuff. I'm very useful.
Vitria will say, "Can you bring me the maps? I'm something of a surveyor myself, and I think I might sit down with the private and do my diagram move and try and find something out from what they've been doing to map out the Tanglelands."
I love it. Will you just remind me of what your diagram move entails, or?
So essentially, I have like a diagram that I can mark my safety track instead of it to get advantage, and then I'm just trying to remember whether I was gonna, if I have enough points to do another one and get a. So I think I can burn a few. Let's have a look. Yeah, so if I use it, I can mark unsafe to, instead of the diagram, to use it for advantage in in an information move, and then if I discover a clue and I've marked something the unsafe, I get an extra clue. So potentially I can get 2 clues.
Amazing. I think, yeah, so, Tennyson kind of gets her backpack out and she has all these kind of laminated bits of paper and she says, Got to be careful. Paper cuts. Nothing stays safe around here. But this is what I've done. I've been working on this since we arrived. I hope it's useful. And I think Vitria, what you see as she hands them over is, the crudest, most unhelpful maps that have ever been constructed. The contour lines of the hills are just running over each other. There is an X which just says Town of Stye, question mark, question mark, question mark. And you can see in several places a dotted line which is marked in the key as safe route through the wire has been hastily rubbed out again. But that doesn't mean that Vitria, with her knowledge of diagrams, can't do some mind palace shit and see the pattern beneath this. So absolutely, give me an information move. I imagine insight is the one to go for here. You could also feasibly say communion, maybe.
I think I might go for insight this time, just because it feels more like insighty. And basically Vitria gets this piece of like grey ritual chalk that she has and starts drawing a big prayer mark to the Slag King on the tabletop and puts all the pieces in the cardinal points of it and starts, chanting sort of make a good and proper count, make a good and proper count, and just like doing these kind of moves with her set square and like measuring all these, like creating a Fibonacci spiral and all these kind of sort of, like meditative, they're almost like mandala exercises, like this, using the little thing to put the sand, like a concentration tool. All right, so I'm gonna roll 1, 2, 3 plus 1. All right, that's
Yeah, Nim decides while Vitria's doing this, one, because of the shit that happened, or rather the shit that came out of the boot of our car, that he's going to let her have some privacy for this and like let her focus, and so he can also not be there if anything goes wrong. So he'll just be walking around the garrison era, probably just trying to speak with and like, interview the various members of the garrison to just kind of like hear what they know, learn about their experiences, and just generally kind of like canvass them for clues.
That sounds really good. Let's have a pair of information moves then. Let's start with you, please, Vitria.
It's got an absolutely amazing roll. I got 3 6s, so I got a 13.
Good Lord. Okay, let me just check your move again and make sure I've got it right. So you've discovered a clue, definitely, so you'll get another clue. And then what does it say?
I feel like on a 13, I might just go all in and mark another one and get a mastermind. Get not a mastermind clue. That's the wrong game. Get a conspiracy clue. I think the way I'd written it, it would be a clue and a conspiracy clue, not that it just replaces the second clue.
Got it. Okay, so we will do the conspiracy clue. I think will be revealed in a nice little scene at the end of the session, because that makes sense and because we are now at the confrontation. Clue number 1, I think, Vitria, as you look down at Tennyson's hastily scrawled maps, there's not perhaps not that much of value to be found in what she has tried to achieve, but as you look at where she has erased patches of land and added in more wire, you can see that some of the more recent scrawlings, looking at some of the fainter ones, you can see the passage of time, how these maps have changed as the shape of the Tanglelands has changed. And there's something very, very curious here, because even though by all, logic, the Tanglelands appear to be expanding in every direction, there are places where, even if only temporarily, it appears to have also faded back. And looking at how uniform those changes are, what you discover is, the clue is this: someone has been harvesting wire from the Tanglelands. Someone has been harvesting wire from the Tanglelands. That is your clue. For your second one, this is your assignment, James. I'm really happy to actually say this is a custodian defined clue if you want to come up with one.
There's a conspiracy clue.
So the conspiracy clue I'll do at the end, but is the logic that the second
I think
the
the logic was because otherwise it's a bit Wrote it. I think I'd imagined it that you were like upgrading it to a conspiracy clue if you mark. So I don't know. It feels a
Got
bit
it.
overpowered otherwise.
That's fair. I mean, you need all the help you can get on this assignment, I think. But let's go to Dr. Harrow. So I'm imagining you by the very edge of the YRC and just watching as rather beautifully, like in a nature documentary, like a bud moving in far sped up motion, just watching as one of the barbed wire coils just inches forward through the soil towards you. Captain Hank, just kind of smoking, says, "You want to step back in 40 seconds. Anyway, yeah, I'll tell you whatever I can, of course. So I'm happy for this just to be a general bit of insight you get, or if there's a particular question you want to ask. Awesome.
I think just general insight from asking. I rolled a 6.
You rolled a 6. Okay, let me give you the clue. First off, wait, my maths is a 6 a miss. 6 is a miss. Okay, let's come back to that then. It's past. Shall we take our break now? Awesome. See you back here in 10. Lovely. Thank you, folks. Okay, let's I think jump back to Welkin's Vigil. Nora, you watch as someone who, it's up to you, I guess, whether you recognize as an extra hand or whether you think this really is Frank being led away, shoved, handcuffed into the back of the pickup truck as Tommy and the militia hoot and holler and cheer. Maybe a couple of them even do excitedly kind of fire their guns in the air. And Tommy goes, "Keep it down, we're doing this professional for the big city cop." All right, slaps the side of the pickup. Let's get in my cellar, boys. We'll have ourselves a trial in the morning. And it just kind of, with the extra hand, who looks very much like Frank, smiling beatifically in the back, the pickup truck roars away. Frank, you watch the scene from the rooftop of the nearby house. Over to the two of you.
I do think Frank very quickly would have made his way down from the roof and is maybe like crouched behind a trash can, not terribly well hidden in an alleyway directly next to the tower. I think he's like trying to catch the corner of Nora's vision. He sees her and her like beautiful streamer laden bicycle there by the roadway, and he's just like kind of crouched behind, waving his hand a little bit, trying not to, have any of the militiamen notice.
I feel like Nora would almost immediately notice Frank there as she's like watching the driveway, like, damn it, Frank. And then she turns and is like, oh, that's Frank. And I think she's still gonna like sigh, look around it. How many of the militia would you say have gone to accompany the extra hand?
Last session we said we were talking maybe like maybe 10, a dozen at most, a small posse.
So I think she's gonna pretend that Angel's still there because that's the only other one whose name I can remember. Got it.
Angel's still there.
Yeah, turns to Angel. It's like, don't suppose you'd let me take a look inside? I don't want to step on any toes,
I think that Angel kind of draws herself up and goes, "Good of you to ask." Tommy, of course, he's the one that gives permission, but I am his second in command. If you look at my stripes, so yeah, it's fine. I mean, the warden, he won't bear any intruders, but give him a thanks and a prayer from us while you're up there. He helped us catch that spy after all. She kind of just pushes the door open to the transformed pub and gestures that you can head inside.
Nora nods. Thank you kindly. and kind of, I think he's going to go inside and like look around a bit, but with the aim of just going to the second floor and like climbing out a window, out of sight of the militia.
Okay, got it. So just to understand, you're kind of climbing the tower in order to kind of sneak around the back, basically. Is that to get near Frank, or do you have another motive?
I mean, motive for going into the tower is like look around, see if there's anything we missed. But exit plan is kind of go out one of the like small windows around the back of the tower, so out of sight, and meet up with Frank.
Got it. Okay, so en route, yeah, as you kind of step into the transformed tower, David has already beautifully described it. In particular, we have these kind of crates of bullets stacked around, and you can hear just the very heavy tread of the warden back and forth on the battlement several stories above you. Please, yeah, I'm very happy for you to do an information roll move to see can you discern anything particularly useful while you're here.
Let me unmute before I go clicking through a million tabs. Okay, I guess probably roll with this. Yeah.
I guess focus or sorry.
Either way, it's a 2 plus a 1 plus a 1. So
a 4. Okay, I get to react. Let's just jump over to Frank. Frank kind of crouched behind the dustbins. You've just seen Nora has gone up into the tower. Angel, she maybe kind of looks forlornly after the disappearing pickups, as if she'd quite like to have been, escorting the spy. That would have been a good duty for her, but she kind of kicks her heels, walks out to the pier, her back to you. As a quick reminder of the geography of this place, obviously you've got the tower in the town square. The Third Watch is the name of the pub. You've got the Founders Row, which is where you went up to see Nora's sister up through the town. But surrounding Welkin's Vigil, you actually have the creeping hills, these gorgeous climbing steps ending in sheer coastal cliffs. Upon those hills, there are towering windmills and also just the faint golden lights of a small temple perched amongst the steps. So a lot going on, but here you are, Frank. What are you going to do?
I think Frank, having seen Nora head into the tower, is kind of like scrabbling around the outside, trying to see if there's any bottom floor windows or anything else to peer inside. I don't actually think that there are. I think like as this grew up, you don't want to have those kinds of openings on a tower like this at that level, right? So I think kind of flummoxed by that, Frank is going to grab like a bit of newspaper or a bit of trash or something and jot down like a note for Nora, and then stick that kind of like relatively where he was, or who knows. Frank is very much in his own head about this. He knows that they needed to meet back up though, so I think he's going to, what Frank's going to do, seeing that he's been taken into custody. I think Frank is going to root through the trash to try to make a disguise. I think is what Frank is going to do. He's just gonna look for like a hat and like a crappy pair of sunglasses, because that's all you need to disguise yourself, right?
I mean, this is yeah, interesting. I'm wondering how best to play this because it's a low stakes risk, but there's a little bit of a risk involved in rooting through the garbage in this town with angry militias and military saints on the loose. What are you afraid that Frank might find in the garbage that he doesn't want to find?
Oh man. I think Frank might be worried what he might find. That's the thing. I think if anything, Frank actually maybe hopes that he might run across something while he's digging through here. I think what Frank is most worried about is that somebody's going to ask him why he's going through the garbage, and he does not have a good answer.
I think that's really, yeah, I reckon, in fact, obviously the dad whose son has just had his bike stolen is going to hear someone rooting around and come out with a baseball bat, right? That's the risk here.
Mhm.
Fantastic. Focus probably makes the most sense here, I reckon, but dealer's choice.
Well, focus is fine with me. Hey, that's 8 on the dice. So +1 is 9. And
Awesome.
you know
Please.
what? I am going to go ahead and use just because I am already laden with conditions, I will use a verse to boost that.
Awesome. So that's a full success. I will let you describe the no doubt foul-smelling disguise that Frank puts on, but then I'll also give you a clue for your trouble if you want to tell me. What does Frank find that he can put on here?
I think Frank finds a visor like you might have for somebody who's like working at like a poker table or something. So it's like not even like really a proper hat. So he finds like some dingy visor and then a pair of like big cracked aviators that he's put on. And I think he like catches his look in a pretty reflective puddle or something he's looking down into, and he's like, yeah, I'm a whole new man. And yeah, I think that's good. Maybe, and then what does he root around and perhaps find in the trash with
I will say that what you find is a clue, which is a rather tattered and beloved-looking paperback, a non-fiction book. It just says on the cover, "The Battle of Soil and Sky, the true tale of heroism in the age of chivalry." And it appears to be a book featuring, as you flip through it, just illustrations of some kind of ancient war between crawling tunnel folk and sky martyrs standing vigil on makeshift scaffolding. So since that's a long one, let me drop it in the chat. But it's a tattered paperback on the Battle of Soil and Sky.
fascinating?
Awesome. And I'm going to say, Nora, you did roll a miss, but I think my keeper fiat for this one is going to be to move things along nicely. The reaction is simply that as you kind of just attempt to stare into one of the crates of bullets, it topples and the bullets go scattering very noisily everywhere, and you distinctly hear Angel scoff from below and say, "Big City Cop's making a mess," before you climb down and join Frank on the other side. So I'll leave the two of you there as you are reunited, and definitely a pretty precarious situation in town. One of you disdained as an interloper, one of you apparently a Linger spy with your face known to the militia. Let's jump right back over to another miss, which was Dr. Harrow attempting to get some information from Captain Hank. And again, we're at the start. This is a very murderous assignment. I'm not going to go hard. I think all that you get from that failure is as Captain Hank lowers his cigarette and a slightly misty-eyed look comes across his face. It's like he wants to say something to you. And then you just very faintly hear the sound of soft, forlorn singing coming over the barbed wire, just very, very distant. And you might almost think that you imagined it because it just fades after a moment. And Captain Hank says, "Yep, that's them, our deserters. Horrible, isn't it? What frightens me most is one day maybe I won't find it horrible to listen to." And he just kind of tosses his cigarette down and says, "Time's up." And Dr. Nim, the barbed wire just kind of curves out with sudden speed, lashing towards your feet, and you just sort of step back in time as it hits the earth where your foot was a second ago. Just to make sure I don't miss this, so you've been mentioning in the chat, James, that because it was a 13, we should also have given you a second clue regardless. So I'm very happy to honor that and happy to re-extend the offer if you would like to invent this one yourself, or I can give you one from the assignment.
I think that I'm going to give it sort of by proxy to Nim in the sense that when the tendril of barbed wire retreats, it leaves like a perfect rusted iron rose with thorns, like perfectly rendered in sort of rusted metal, just lying at his feet.
And I am going to write a verse of history to bump my result from a miss to a 7 to 9. So I can also get a clue.
Yeah, you can. All right. Okay, so we've got the rose. We have the suspicion that actually someone has been harvesting this wire. I mean, this is quite convenient because I gave it to you not as a clue. But one of the clues that James has written here is a strange thrumming song emitted from the resonating groves themselves. So you can just faintly hear the Razor Choir's song rising up from deep within the Tanglelands. And just to add a bit of flavor in it, I'd say you can just hear a few faint words. We need no eyes where we will go. We need no eyes where we will go. And the song just kind of, it begins to go a little bit vibrato in a way that might be laughter, or it might be sobbing. You can't quite tell. But then the sound fades and you're just left with the rattling and rustling of the barbed wire sea shifting.
Yeah, that's awesome. And I think probably after Vitria and Nim's respective things, like probably they like gear up what they can. I think it'll be time for us to like head in.
I have this feeling like when we're standing there looking at the Tanglelands, we get that kind of folk horror thing where it kind of zooms in and looms in on you. You know, that camera effect where it kind of tunnel forms and like slowly expands around you.
The Nazgul zoom, yes.
I didn't know it had a name,
Awesome.
but yes, that exact thing. Yeah.
Very, very cool. Love it. Yeah. You guys gear up. I'm imagining very much there is not much protective equipment the soldiers are willing to lend you at this point, but in the garrison, with Tennyson's help, you find some thick gloves. Maybe, we get a little bit of an A-team montage of you wrapping the masking tape around your wrists, Train to Busan style, trying as best you can to protect yourself against what lies ahead in the depths of the Tanglelands. Captain Hank kind of comes in to look at you, just lifts his visor and shakes his head in pity and says, when they come looking for you, is there anything you want me to tell them?
Turn back.
I'll do that.
Yeah, tell them to fuck off, Captain.
I'll do that myself, don't you worry. Yes. And then turns and strides back out to his waiting post. Tennyson kind of says, so good luck. I hope my maps were useful. We do know the usual safe route into the first bit. So if you look ahead, you'll see actually try and make out the shapes of the waystones. See the waystones, follow the chain, and that'll take you the first few steps in safety. Sometimes.
And in we go.
Are we going in?
We gotta.
Let's do it.
I think Vitria just sighs, and she has a more practical set of clothes. Like she's not looking like in her business attire. She's just like covered in makeshift armor, like everyone else is, sort of bleeding and bloody, bleeding and cut and.
Awesome. Okay. James, just to actually check in with the creator of this awesome assignment. So we have a special mechanic, the jagged move, which is about when you make a path through the dense barbed groves of the Tanglelands. On paper, it says specifically in search of the barbed portal, which we haven't really got to yet. It makes sense to me on paper as a kind of a universal mechanic for moving through. But if you disagree with that, let me know and I'll.
It's based on a move for like a game called Dungeon World, which is also powered by the Apocalypse, which is called the Labyrinth move. And the idea is it's like the heart of the maze, whatever the maze may be. So in this case, fictionally, there is a heart to the maze, but it doesn't matter whether Vitria and Nim know what it is. It's simply that one has to pass through to get to the middle.
Got it. So just to explain it for everyone then, the jagged move is basically how you proceed through the Tanglelands. You get a positive modifier of +1 for every condition the Tanglelands have given you. So if you are heavily bleeding, the Tanglelands will accept you more readily. If you have cleared a condition, and I will have to keep track of this, for every condition that you've cleared, every barb gifted condition cleared while the assignment is active, you get a -1 modifier. So I'll have to keep an eye on how much you folks are bleeding. And effectively on the roll, a 10+, you take a hold point, which you can then spend towards arriving at your final destinations. On a 7 to 9, same, but there's a complication. On a miss, there'll be a hostile encounter with a danger, and then there's a couple more that we will are very unlikely that we'll check in if we get them. So if you want to get further and further into the assignment, you're going to need to spend 3 hold. At any time, you may spend 1 hold to discover a clue or 2 hold to find an object. So you're building up a useful resource as you venture into this very, very dangerous place, which you're going to definitely need. Does that all make sense? Do we have any questions about how we're going to handle this? Or do you folks want to make your first jagged move as you stand before the sea of razor wire?
I mean, I think we might as well just do it.
Awesome. Okay. Before we let you in, let's just take a moment to describe the jagged. Let's wait and see how you roll, I think. So if you folks want to do, you can do a die each. One of you could take it on, but this is the usual 2d6 roll to make the jagged move. No modifiers.
Yes, because we have no stigmata. So let's, yeah, I'll do a die.
Cool.
I think we have to, it's like in Dungeon World, I think we have to do it individually because the consequences are individual.
Yeah, gotcha.
So yeah, but if you want to go ahead and a bit like in any of those moves, just say what you want to, how you're going to find your way deeper into the Tanglelands and roll, and then I can have a go once we've found something.
Yeah, okay, I'll go ahead and just establish that for Nim's roll, he is at first attempt moving with a great deal of respective caution and trying to stick only to like routes that have the least risk of like getting swallowed up in them, which is really funny because I rolled a 4.
A 4. Interesting. Okay, and what does Vitria roll?
So I think Vitria is going to, she finds sort of burning a hole in her pocket, the feather of Mother Asbestos with the metallic sheen, and she holds it up and looks at Nim and says, well, that bitch better be good for something, right? And starts using it like a tuning fork, hoping it will react with the wire. So I'm going to use that for advantage to try and navigate. So flat roll 3 dice. That is an 8.
An 8. All right. Well, I think the complication is very simple. So Vitria, you head in first, holding up Mother Asbestos token, as you say, like a tuning fork, and you think you can feel it humming rhythmically. And as you just approach the razor wire sea, Captain Hank just shaking his head sadly as he watches you go, Tennyson holding up a hand in sorrowful farewell. The wire spreads to either side, and you can just see that there is indeed a chain of jagged, rusted metal waystones driven hard into the still bleeding earth, leading you on. And Vitria, you just follow it, your hand just barely, not quite touching the chain, just resting it beneath you as you proceed deeper and deeper into the Tanglelands. And then you can just hear the soft rustling of the razor wire labyrinth closing in behind you. Vitria, when you look around, you can't see Dr. Nim Harrow anymore. And a moment later, you find yourself stumbling out into a keen-edged helical bramble on all sides, surrounded by wire trees, and just a small circle of empty mud, stinking puddles of blood just kind of bubbling from the ground all around you, but a clearing in the middle of the maze. And as you look back and forth, Nim is nowhere to be seen. Dr. Harrow, you lose sight of Vitria, the razor wire just closing in behind her. And as you kind of try and follow her, the labyrinth opens up again in another direction, drawing you on. You turn and turn. I'm imagining not severe cuts. We're not picking up any conditions here, but just your skin is bloodied, marked with red lines before you even knew it. You stumble on. You can't hear anyone anymore. You can't see anything but the sky above and the sea of razor wire surrounding you. And then suddenly you stumble out, and there's someone looking at you. A bold, emaciated woman, her skin alabaster white, dressed in blood-soaked sackcloth. Let me check the, sorry, started reading this, I was like, oh my God, let's check the safety. We are good. A blindfold of gilded razor wire bites into the ruin of her eye sockets. She has 2 blood tracks trailing down her cheeks, cracked and dry. More wire garlands her neck, her wrists, and her ankles, puncturing pallid flesh. Her fingertips and teeth are stained gold. This is Barb, and her gleaming smile is ugly and cruel. Her wire song soars through the air like the rush of adrenaline after a sudden injury. And Dr. Harrow, as the wire moves, it seems to be moving to her song, hemming you in, as the strange woman looks at you and she says, "The wire song responds, we need no eyes where we will go." And she just kind of lifts one very sharp gold fingertip towards you and says, "You need no eyes where you will go." This is going to be a revelation move situation, I think. How do you want to respond, surrounded by the sea of razor wire? Barb, soprano of the Torn Prince, softly crooning, the wire following her command.
I think since they're crooning, they are undoubtedly breathing. I think as they get closer, Nim is going to do as he did on the mountain, breathe out a small cloud of poisonous gas at a slim, narrow moment, like as this person is getting closer, and use that as a momentary advantage to book it. So I will mark a box on Meet the Family to breathe poison in their face, and then assumedly make the revelation move. So in this case, I'm I'm just simply afraid that I'm going to blunder directly into a nasty snare.
I can't believe you robbed me of the opportunity to ask the most fun question. What are you afraid is going to happen? That's
Well, that's okay,
perfect.
because you can say it's worse than that.
Here is how it's worse than that.
Yeah.
I think Dr. Nim will absolutely stumble into a snare, and the barbs emanating from Barb's wrists will just kind of catch around you, and she'll say, I like your family. Why don't you come and meet mine? And just Nim will be dragged with the barbed wire coiled around his wrists through the mud back into the labyrinth to the lair of the razor choir.
All right, revelation move plus what are we thinking?
Let's take a look-see.
Probably vitality, or just for the sake of getting away.
Vitality makes sense. I think
Yeah.
Communion, you could argue.
Yeah, I think the focus is going to be more on the vitality angle, just because he's trying to escape and like run away. I think I will use my glass slides of contaminated blood. I actually think that in flashback, we can see that part of his preparation for going into the Tanglelands was examining some of his slides of some of his samples of kind of the blood composition for contamination, and specifically used it to contaminate his own blood with some of these poisonous compounds to help him in this this poison that he did. So it's a little bit more potent and bought him a little more time.
Love it. Please give us a roll.
With advantage. Let's see what we get. That's a good number. That is a 9.
A 9. All right. Do you want to tell us what happens as Dr. Nim breathes out this poisonous fume at Barb?
I think he times it directly when they would be inhaling as part of their crooning. So it just shoots right back down into their respiratory system. It's a acrid, like choking poison, and it dissipates very quickly. So it's really not enough to do them in, but it does burn their throat on the inhale, interrupting their song and turning it into a raspy wheeze as Nim seizes the moment to, not the way he came, but like just the nearest route, books it, just goes real fast and to get away from this person, while also trying to, like, you know, mentally map out, being like, okay, fuck, how do I route? Where did Vitria go? What's going on here? And he just runs.
Awesome. I'm just gonna, the complication is something that Dr. Harrow actually doesn't see. So I think as he books it back through the wire, which opens up again to kind of closing after him, just Barb, who of course is no longer human. So the poison has definitely had an impact on her. It's made her choke, and she just goes, and then she vomits up her stomach and her intestines on the floor, her mouth. And then on the ground, just they begin to coil like wire, rising up into the air around her, like the snakes of Medusa, her own spilling entrails. And she goes, the song, will not cease, the song, will not cease, and begins to walk after Dr. Harrow through the labyrinth. So the complication is, I think you've made her a bit more powerful.
Fuck.
Lovely. Okay, let us jump back to a slightly cozier scene. Nora and Frank, you have just met up at the base of the tower at Wilkins Vigil. Frank is wanted by the law. Nora is being condescended to a lot. Otherwise, you do have a pretty decent idea of what could be going on here. What's the plan?
Nora, Nora, it's me. Here, you probably can't tell because of the glasses and everything, but it's me, Frank. It's me. They took away just one of the extra hands. No worry about it.
I was hoping that was the case. Well, that could have gone better, but what can we do?
Could have gone a mite bit worse too. So thinking about looking at these clouds right now, a bit of silver lining would do us dandy, right?
Nora looks up, and I think, as opposed to both of them getting rained on a bit harder, I think just Nora gets rained on a little bit harder, like bucket of water to the face rain. Then she kind of looks at Frank again, just with water sliding off her face. Her mascara is probably running at this point. I don't think waterproof mascara is meant to take that much abuse. She says, silver linings. Okay, silver linings. We aren't detained. We have no choice but to finish this. We can't burn the whole town down. What do you mean by a silver lining?
Well, he kind of walks up closer to you, Nora, trying to keep this conversation very private. So I spoke, I suppose, with the big fella up top. I think what we might have on our hands here is some kind of what do they call it? A win-win. If we can figure out how to draw the sympathy of, or otherwise convince the Sleepless Warden to maybe join our cause. We of course do have some enemies right now who wish to do us harm, and while it wouldn't be terribly beneficial to them, not much of a help. People have been impressing upon me lately that it's perhaps time to take some sides here. That maybe it's better for us and for more people if we continue to do our jobs well, right? And maybe these other people who are upset with us aren't such good people. So seeing as that's the case, and seeing as we got a big a war machine of sorts up here who's looking for a war to fight, I was thinking maybe we might give him some purpose and kill. Well, let's not kill any birds with any stones, but certainly take care of the problem, right? That's silver.
Suppose you're right. There's always a war to fight. So we get a hold of the big guy's programming or what have you, and
Yeah, I haven't quite figured out that bit yet, but we know that it was kind of roused by some of the smaller ones scattered about. I wonder if we couldn't investigate some of those, or perhaps the fields in which that was found. Maybe we can understand a little bit better the mechanisms at play, or the gods at play here, and in doing so, we could push our case.
I kind of half smiles. You can understand a god. You're a cleverer person than I am, Frank. All right. Let's maybe head to that housing development. See what we can dig up. Possibly literally. Let's stop by the van and grab a shovel.
Sounds good. Also, how do I look? Do I look a sight?
She looks at Frank. Stop by the van, grab a shovel, and whatever I can pull out of the costumes I've got in there. Maybe a wig.
I think we kind of get the two of them heading back towards the van. Frank, costumes? I've never particularly been involved in theater myself, but I always thought that maybe acting could have been a route for me. And Frank says in the way that like people who've never really thought seriously about doing any sort of acting sometimes imagine themselves to be.
Okay, so I think absolutely we can, very much cut to Frank in whatever costume you have found in Nora's stagecraft box, and Nora with the shovel advancing towards. Did I just to check in? You went to go to housing development, as in Founders Row. Is that correct?
The new housing development where that. Why am I wanting to call it Wally? Like the little minesweeper's Roomba was dug up.
Okay, I mean it's called Wally, yeah, definitely now. Okay, cool. So I think slightly outside of town on these magnificent cliffs that we've established. I mean, the clue did say a notice of proposed land development, including a series of modern high-rise apartments. If we establish that that already has been built and that's where they dug up this thing, I guess let's introduce this as a new location then. We're absolutely on the edge of town on these cliffs. You can still see the building site that is the kind of the dig site for this series of modern high-rise apartments. So a lot of signage, a lot of warning tape, a lot of in the daytime there would be people with hard hats who'd probably get along very well with Vitria. This has the look of a series of high rises that needs to go up very, very quickly. But amongst the dozers, the diggers, the portaloos, and indeed the beginnings of the foundations, there is soil, nothing but soil, and the history of Welkin's Vigil buried deep beneath it. So, over to you.
Well, we've got the shovels. Where do we want to start digging? The more freshly tilled earth, the not remotely tilled yet earth, or perhaps digging up some of these gardens here. And I think we look at Frank and he's wearing much more appropriately. He's wearing like a bit of high vis, like a vest. And then he's got like a hard hat up. It's almost like he's doing his best Vitria job site impersonation, which hopefully gives them a little bit more cover for where they're going to go and muck about.
Better check one of the new ones. Or I think Nora's kind of like squinting around because they're still standing in the pouring rain. She has gotten water in her eyes. She's not having a good time. Just kind of squinting around, like figure anything that's where the buildings already stand would have been found. Rather avoid any freshly poured foundations if it's all the same to you. Let's maybe head over where they've started digging things up and avoid getting swallowed by the Slag King.
And I think Frank, for perhaps the first time I think because like he's been playing dress up, right? So he's feeling, over the moon with how the day has gone. He managed to successfully escape an armed mob. He's playing dress up now, which Frank never gets to do. And in that more sobering moment, Frank looks down and right. Perhaps you know what? Maybe this will help. And Frank's gonna pull out. He has a item that he acquired from the previous mystery, a government manual entitled "Architectural Miracles: Guidelines for Neutralization." And I think he's going to say, maybe the leftovers from the Slag King would be more helpful than hurtful. Maybe something was run across here and integrated with the foundations. I'm sure there's something in here. And he's like flipping through the codes. Yeah. I can do a structural survey and Frankly, I can compositional analysis. Basically, I think I can determine maybe some of the things that have been in contact with this, and that might help us learn a little bit of something.
Nora kind of nods, eyes the buildings, kind of hears Lucien Baton's snickering, like, I don't know what this ghost is at this point. He's just peanut gallery. She says, you try that, I'll head away from the buildings, keep in a earshot and line of sight, but I'm gonna make sure things for you aren't gonna get grown out of proportion.
Well, I appreciate that. I'm gonna. He like kind of stands up a little bit straighter, does his best Vitria impression. I'm gonna go and take a soil sample and verify that these buildings are up to code. And kind of like with a chuckle, a little bit of a skip in his step, Frank makes his way down kind of one of the muddy slopes to part of an active job site where some of the foundation has been freshly laid for one of these new high rises.
Love it. Did you say what Frank's costume is that he's picked, by the way, David?
I think he's just dressed. He's dressed in like some coveralls, a high vis vest, and he's got like a hard hat going on. He looks like he's supposed to be at a job site. I think that's the goal of the costume.
Awesome. Okay, so you use the manual, and I'm astonished and delighted that was so specifically helpful for this. Are you going to try and get advantage to be digging to see what you can find, or is it more of a surveillance that you're doing here?
I think this is digging to see what he can find. I think this is he's angling for some information move here.
Awesome. Give me an information move if you please. So yeah, I think
this is, we are doing some digging. I could see insight, vitality.
I could
plus one to either.
Yeah,
it's the same. But I do get advantage from using the book. That's 3 dice. I almost never use digital rollers, but my dice are across the room, so hey, that's good. Top 2 are 5, so that's 10. Plus 1, 11.
Awesome. I think, Nora, as you kind of, from your position, you watch the little figure of Frank in his bright orange high-vis vest and helmet. And just almost immediately as he drives the spade in, you hear a clunk. And Frank, obviously, you are thrilled because you know that your clever use of the manual has really paid off. You've been so helpful here. You've almost immediately found what you're looking for. Nora, as you watch, you know that the real reason he's found something is because it would be incredibly boring for the watcher if the watcher had to watch him digging all night long. So of course he's found it straight away. Of course he has. The soil, as we've established, it's slick with rain. And actually the spade just pushes back what Frank has found quite easily. It just keeps digging and digging, and it just avalanches down further into the building site. And remarkably, perhaps in less than 15 minutes of digging, you can see what you found, Frank. And that is a stone monument, a dolmen on its side. It looks decidedly ancient, although it's still covered in dirt and the rain is falling down on it. You're certain that you can see sigils carved into its massive flank. And chained with old rusted iron chains to this dolmen is a massive military-looking aircraft propeller. So this is what you found, a monument featuring a massive aircraft propeller. Lovely. Just to check in, Nora, was there an action you were taking as you were kind of looking on from the sidelines, or were you just staying back?
I think Nora was also going to like poke around in the soil a bit there, but seeing that Frank found something, kind of just leaned on her shovel, kept an eye on it, hoping nothing exploded, and like waving off Lucien Beton like he's a particularly annoying fly. Kind of just muttering to herself, "There's always a war on. Always gonna be gods that feed on that sort of stuff. God, I hate it here. I hate it here so much."
Hey,
Well,
Nora, do you see this? I've it's a propeller, preposterously large. What kind of aircraft would this have been mounted on? Or is it just, do you think it was just decorative? He says like almost hopefully, like while Nora is musing about the horrors of war, Frank is over here hopeful, like, we don't need to think about all that. Like, this wasn't used in combat. This was just it just looks pretty, right? It's reminiscent. It's art, you know, buried here under the earth.
Could have been either. I was told that stuff like that has a bit more power for the god it's given to if it's used, but well, this town hasn't seen combat for a while. Good job finding it, Frank. Let's take a closer look and hopefully we won't be out here all night.
Yeah, there are a number of interesting sigils on it. Perhaps there's something we can learn. I think the big guy himself, he was well, a statue, a decommissioned, you know, something or other. I wasn't listening too closely, unfortunately, when they were explaining all that, and now I'm somewhat regretting that. But perhaps this is of similar ilk. These sigils may be of help.
Nora nods, like very gingerly, just makes her way closer to the active building site. Huh. Right, that looks, huh. I don't think I've seen anything like these before. Have you?
Oh, weapons of war and the gods associated with them are not exactly my core purview. Now, I'm sure if there's if there's anywhere there would be some references on that kind of material, it would definitely be in a town like this. Maybe is there some kind of historical society or library, perhaps? There's got to be something here that we could look into.
Hang on. Remind me, I think Nora was making a phone call at the time that Dr. Harrow spilled his drink all over the historian. But was Frank like nearby? Would he know that guy's his? I think Frank cleaned up after.
the barman was actively pointing all of you to Peter Mullock, the historian. So I think it's completely valid that you've heard that information. Yeah.
Okay, so Nora's then going to say, as she's getting out, I'm going to assume that they have like standard issue instant cameras or something. And she like kind of just starts recording the sigils. Well, if I recall correctly, there's a fellow in town who people call the historian. Maybe we'll see if he knows anything.
Well, if it's all the same to you, then I suppose our next stop is to make them a visit.
Lovely. I think as we've established that, let's have one final check-in with the Wire Boys. So Vitria style, she's just emerged into a clearing in the Wire, and as if you've emerged at almost exactly the same moment, but somehow on the opposite side of the clearing, the razor wire parts, and Dr. Harrow, looking, I imagine, quite haggard, just staggers out on the other side. As the two of you stare at the muddy ground between you, you start to realize what lies beneath the mud. This clearing is a scene of carnage. A detachment of peninsulan soldiers have been sacrificed to the groves of wire here, forming a gruesome garden of corpses swaying in the bloody breeze. Helmets, guns, and equipment scattered across the ground, sodden with blood and slick with viscera. Paint the scene, and either or both of you, how have the groves posed the corpses in a gruesome tableau for the custodians to find? So how have the groves posed and arranged the corpses?
There are 3 of them that, with the eruptions of razor wire sprouting from their flesh, spreading rotting viscera, you know, like it's like garlands outward. The wire has locked and posed them into bastardized positions of parade rest and salutes, as if to greet us, their arms held fast by wires sprouting and spiraling out of fingers. And even one of them has like a wire erupting from its mouth to like pull the sides of its face into like a welcoming smile, but it's more like a horrific bloody rictus grin. You give me barbed wire horror and I go the fuck off. This is what I do.
Excellent.
There's also another thing like suspended from the clearing that looks at first like a kind of weird chandelier, but it's actually about 5 soldiers in a Vitruvian man, all kind of posed with their limbs at different levels of extent, all kind of wrapped together, and their arms like fanned out as if they're like, it's like a tail and wings just sort of directly, and their blood is kind of dripping onto the ground, forming a puddle below them.
Some people groove out to jazz. I'm just listening to this like, yeah. Fantastic. I think absolutely. And between you, obviously, as Dr. Harrow has said, this parade of soldiers frozen in a tableau, the Vitruvian man dangling from one of the trees, and just above it, you do see something else. So there is kicking, swaying, and squirming, suspended by a barbed wire net from the highest branches of the tree, is a woman. Military uniform, a black MP helmet just dangling now from a lower branch. And she is just yelling in fury, blood covering her face like camouflage. Get me down! Get me down! I need to find them! I need to find them! I need to find them! They must pay! They must pay! Get me down! She has not seen you, I should note. She is yelling to the sky, to the wire, to the world. This is Seeker Clarice Perseforest, I'm sorry.
Vitria turns to Nim and says, when I think about how much money the Church of the Slag King spent trying to get metal to grow itself, and then I look at this, I think, what the hell are we doing?
I think Nim is like looking around almost in disbelief at the Tanglelands, peripherally aware of Perseforest, but just looking around, and his eyes awash with both stunned, horrified amazement and grim sickness, because he's just kind of like muttering around, just being like, to think divine gods, elements of everything, metal and iron, all bastardized. He is just kind of looking on with this sense of like, look what has befallen this place. Like, look what has been wrought by the bastardization of the perfect elements of creation. Just, yeah. But then he kind of like shakes himself off a bit and nods over to Persephorus towards Vitria to just, to signal we should probably do something about that.
I'm guessing after a while we can probably, cut through some of the wire and loosen the net.
I don't know. I don't know if I'm going to let you have that one free because this is your fault, James, because you wrote in an opportunity to
No.
get wire cutters, which you did not take. So I think this is not going to be that easy.
No,
To
I did
cut
that
her
on
down.
purpose, and I fell for my own. I fell for my own trick, so that is fair enough.
No, you can absolutely attempt to cut her down, but the wire is moving and tightening round her arms and shoulders. It is alive. Freeing her may only entice it to move on to one of you instead. So it is not a risk-free move to get her loose, I think.
Knowing that this thing is kind of alive and just to help maybe take some of the risk off of Vitria, I think Nim is going to, we have in previous verses of history seen when he, or this is actually verse of prophecy, but when he, a past experiment when he had a bunch of chemicals put into his body, I think he offers to like maybe allow himself to like get ensnared a little bit, maybe to like help draw some of it away from Persephorus to kind of like do this like equilibrium thing of just like, I want to get out of this, but I will, if it helps get through, like maybe I can have it cut into me a little bit.
Interesting. Vitria, what do you think if that's the choice?
I think that sounds good. Yeah, it's like,
Okay. If Dr. Harrow is taking the risk, I guess it makes sense for Alex to roll, or you can roll mutually, up to you.
Here's a crazy idea. What if I just take a condition and I can bargain that to be like, what if we can downgrade it from a revelation to a veiled move because I'm taking a condition. I'm just spouting random shit and breaking the game at this point.
You're not getting that. This is this is the Tanglelands, baby. We don't play
Yeah,
like
it
that.
is.
This is definitely a revelation move. I will ask you though.
I will do it though. Yeah, I'll absolutely.
Is a condition what you feel will happen?
Among them, but I think also just that it's gonna like probably draw me deeper and once again separate me from Vitria.
No, I definitely think it's worse than that. I think it is building something here with this Vitruvian man. And I think perhaps the barbed wire is not just holding Seeker Persephorus in place. It is just slowly lowering her and binding her into these massive bodies. Because we're doing Clive Barker and gosh, what's the name of his story? There is a wonderful story of his where there is great giants made of people bound into each other. And I think that is exactly what is being created here. And so I think, Dr. Harrow, not only will you not free Seeker Persephorus, but you also, the wire will just wrap you into this great giant of accumulated bodies that will then begin to slowly stride forward towards Vitria.
I'm going to roll. I'm gonna. Here's the thing. I'm gonna roll still. However, I am. It's already marked, but it still exists fictionally. So at least this gives James some fictional positioning to work with. I do still have that elixir that dissolves concrete and melts steel. So that will absolutely help in dealing with this. So at least to pass off to Vitria as at least like fictionally you have that. And I will mark antiseptic for like the post matter of I'm gonna treat the fuck out of these wounds. Like I'm gonna be bound up in razor wire and I'm really gonna need to treat myself after this, but at least I came prepared. This sucks, just so we're clear. This sucks. But I'm glad I did that because that is all right, 10 on the die. And plus what? Communion?
Communion makes sense, yeah. Or
Right, then
vitality, I'll let you have it's the same, but
just 10 then.
10 it is. That's a success. Please describe how you successfully get Seeker Persephorus down from the wire.
I do think he I'll throw this over to James to narrate the latter half because I like the little dynamic duo. I think the first setup is Nim sees the complex lattice work of bodies that you've just described that are being drawn together. And, you know, very similarly as if this were actual, you know, furniture, it'd be like, all right, well, following the ropes and supports and like where are some of the like the linchpins of this, and he's just kind of like going over there and like to like you know, a mass of this tangled jagged grove, and you know, you see that he like winces like, oh, this is a terrible idea, but then again he reflects on his entire career thus far, and he begins to cut free and tear at the tape and protective gloves he was wearing to expose like a bare arm and hand, and he sees this kind of like slightly writhing opening in the razor wire that is kind of part of this moving complex that's assembling this thing, and he takes like this deep sharp series of breaths in and then just plunges his arm into there, and just begins like to grab some of the wire and like, you know, wriggle around, hoping that like a spider's prey when it wiggles in the web, it actually kind of gives it, you know, more of an alert, is hoping the jagged grove will notice more. And I think indeed we actually see it like the process of drawing Persephorus into it, the whole process like slows, buying Vitria a lot more time to actually get to her and free her. And I'll let James, you know, take a stab at the actual freeing of Persephorus part.
Yeah, Vitria, I'm not gonna mark it for this, but Vitria has like a fountain pen that has weird stuff in it, and she's filled the reservoir up with the elixir and is like stabbing bits of it like almost like a soldering iron and melting them, just saying, fucking why won't you break, and just stabbing at it, just covered in sort of blood and bits of flaking bits of wire, and just gradually rips, you know, Persephorus just kind of rips free with this kind of wet tearing sound, and they just fall back onto the kind of muddy ground in a puddle of sort of yellowish ooze, and the now freed wire just sort of lashes around like it's trying to grab onto them still.
And in the chaos and in the screaming, I will very quickly actually use this to segue into narrating my verse of history, because I have a flashback to the event which made you step away from your faith. And I can't remember if this was, I got to unmark one previously, and I can't remember if this was one I did, but this is a separate event. With the screaming and chaos, and Nim, you know, up to his elbow in something terrible and like, you know, wincing and yelling in pain, we hard cut to this like darkened space, alarm klaxons blaring, there's distant like chaos and screaming and the sounds of like roaring flame or some kind of vast machinery. We see several others, scientists garbed in like, you know, white lab coats or protective gear, like sprinting and like running away down a hallway as Nim is going opposite of the flow, with a panicked expression on his like sweaty face. Everyone is like running. You can see that there's like some distant like incredible like bright glow, a haze in the air coming from a chamber up ahead, and he enters one of the engineering rooms of the facility, where this experimental joint development between the Church Electric and you know, the Nesh Ministry of Energy and Research, or whatever it was I called it a long time ago. There is this massive like reactor saint experimentation that was actively being worked on, and a number of fail safes have broken, and basically it's the divine version of core breaking containment, and essentially a divine meltdown of energy and chemical and radiation. And there are people who are incredibly loyal to the cause, people who have been some of the most brilliant minds Nim has ever worked with. He now sees their forms warping and mutating in the basking radiant glow of this cascading catastrophic miracle. And he knows that what's going to happen is more terrible than anything that's presently going on if someone doesn't do something. And he knows it's going to be the death of him, but he can't shake the horror of what his life's work is doing to people who equally in part devoted themselves to it. And he knows that it's because of the men upstairs, bureaucracy. It's because of the red tape. It's all of these shortcuts and oversights that have stepped in the way of development and safety and progress that is now leading to a catastrophe like this. And he enters the through like an airlock, kind of like sliding cycle door, this space, and you can just see this like the vast cylindrical construct in the middle of the room where there is the amalgamated reactor saint stored within, and many of the corpses of the scientists in the periphery are now becoming angelic, like sprouting and growing and glowing. And there is the one failsafe that hasn't broken, which is a manual shutdown. The problem with the manual shutdown is it requires one to reach into a containment core and manually disengage it from a socket. This would be done with a heavily suited, environmentally sealed protective gauntlet that the team designed for these unthinkable scenarios. But he doesn't have that. He doesn't have time to go back and find that. He's got to stop it now, or it's going to get worse. And he knows that if he puts his arm into this socket to manually grab the core override and disengage it, he will be dead within mere hours. And it will be an excruciating, awful death. But the ends justify the means, and well, it's better to break this off. He shoves his hand in. He remembers great pain. He remembers terrible, horrifying liquefaction of his own form. But when he came to, Nim was still just Nim. Somehow he survived such an experience. Somehow he did not die within hours. Somehow he was visibly unchanged. But all of his colleagues were still dead. And the complete failure of his life's work lay before him unsalvageable. From that day, he began to have less of a positive outlook on his devotion to the small gods of the chemical convocation, for their purity almost was nothing in the face of such chaos. And to top it all off, he was changed, though no one ever would see it on the outside. This was when Nim soon learned that he was a vessel for powers that he now feared more than devoted himself to, and could cause miracles to happen.
Marvelous. Thank you. That was so good. I think we're pretty much at the end here. I just want to quickly introduce the final conspiracy clue, which is a set one. So I think we cut very quickly back to Nora and Frank. Nora, since you said you were heading towards the living building site, the two of you intending to head down to the Historical Preservation Society, you do just hear in one of the little booths that make up part of the construction site, in a little side office, a phone is beginning to ring and ring and ring. And I'm sure as the Watcher would tell you, a gun must be fired by the third act and a ringing phone must be answered.
Nora sighs, looks at Frank. For the record, I don't know anything about horror movies. She rolls her eyes, picks up the phone.
There's just a click, and then you hear a voice that you have heard once before, a gruff, low growl of a voice tinged with amusement. Joe Lynch says, "Ah, having fun rolling around in the mud, are you?"
Had worse. How have you been?
Pretty good, actually. I don't know if you remember, Nora, our last conversation, it ended a bit badly. It ended a little bit more aggressively than I'd have liked it to. Do you recall?
Nora, completely, like flatly, vividly.
Thought you might. So I've had to take a few extra measures to ensure our next conversation goes better. I do hope you don't mind. Funny thing, your friend Dr. Harrow's been a bit naughty. A few people have been turning up here and there across the peninsula with faces melted off, radiation poisoning, all kinds of trouble. 2 victims so far, and I'm afraid in 48 hours there's going to be a third. Say hello to him. And you just hear the phone click, and then there's just the voice of Professor Van der Horn. As always, he's not panicked, but perhaps Nora, having been interrogated by him, you are struck by just the hardness of breath in his voice, and he says, "Nora? Hello, Nora. I'm sorry." And it is definitely the first time you've heard Professor Van der Horn apologize. Joe Lynch takes the phone back and says, "His body's going to be found in front of the biased offices in 48 hours. He'll look just like the others. You know what the sentence is for anyone who kills their own supervisor, don't you?"
I've had it explained to me.
Thought you might have. Thought you might have.
What do you want?
I want a second conversation, and I want you out of my hair for good. I'm going to give you some coordinates. I want to see all 4 of you here in 48 hours so we can get this sorted between us and we can get you off our turf. And he reads out what are clearly a set of map coordinates. It says, "We'll meet you there. 48 hours, like I said, otherwise your professor turns up dead and all of your lives will be forfeit. We can be reasonable about this. Like I said, I just can't take any chances. Any last words, Professor?" And Van der Horn he takes the phone back and says, Nora, it's a trap. It's a trap." The phone is yanked away. Captain Lynch says, "Of course it is," and puts the phone down on you.
Nora kind of just stares at the phone for a second, replaces it on the hook, steals a pen and a pad of paper to write down the coordinates, then says to Frank, "Well, I guess we'd better finish up here quickly. Hopefully, Dr. Harrow and Vitria don't die."
And on that note of hope, let's end it. Awesome. Thank you, folks. Yeah, meanwhile, if we went out of time, we should definitely do a smash cut back to it's called a Gilligan cut, isn't it? Where it's the 2 of you in the barbed wire labyrinth. Awesome. Okay, let's look at XP. Let's start on the right. David, how did Frank do today?
On the XP thing, I think I'm at 0 for 0 or 0 for 4 of my questions here. No assignment was completed. Didn't really engage with a god, angel, or other divine manifestation. At least I technically started off chatting with I'm blanking on his name, the Sleepless Warden. But that was like an extension of last session. I don't really consider that. And then I selected, did you go to a way to connect with the local community, and were you vulnerable with someone? But I don't really think Frank did either of those this session. It's a rare session where Frank does not go out of his way to connect with the local community, but now that he's a little bit on the lam, I don't really think that's what's going through his head. So
tell me if you think this is so soft. I hate to see a 0. Could you argue that there was vulnerability in Frank trying on costumes, trying on a different side of him, getting to actually experience play in a way that he hasn't?
You know, given how Frank's character has been, I think, yeah, like getting to play around a little bit is a bit of vulnerability for Frank. 'Cause he's not being helpful to someone else. He's doing something that he himself enjoys. So yeah, I'll take that. I like that.
Awesome. All right, brilliant. Yeah, that'll be a 1. That I guess that would be an advancement.
Mm-hmm.
Lovely. James, Vitria, how did she do?
I think I got 2. One of them is I struggled with my personal faith by basically contemplating that we'd just been sent here to die for reasons that we didn't understand, and that wasn't entirely what Vitria had in mind for her life plan. And the other one is I talked about how the Church of the Slag King has been trying to grow, metal for years, and about the kind of the horrific sort of prolific nature of the Tanglelands. So I was talking about architecture in that sense.
Yeah, perfect. All right, please take the 2, and that means you will get to advance as well, which is very exciting. And Alex, how did Nim do?
Yeah, I think I got 3. I did engage with a divine manifestation just by proxy of being in the Tanglelands.
Yeah, I feel like the Tanglelands, you're not really going to be able to avoid that, are you?
No, I'm fully engaged. Did I struggle with my personal faith? Yes. Not just within that little verse I narrated, but also a few moments peppered around most strongly and just kind of like the horrified looking around at like how like iron and oxygen is all being like bastardized for such like horrific purposes. And then was I vulnerable with someone? That's what I was angling for in the scene at the garrison with Vitria, just talking about being like, you and I are the most dangerous ones of the agents, the custodians. They probably sent us here to die, or at least contain the thing and us.
Valid, definitely valid. All right, please take it. And for Nora, how did we do?
I think I just got 1, and I think even that's stretching it a bit. So no, we didn't complete an assignment, nor did not engage with any divine manifestation. I think I did a bit of a monologue about the nature of gods, with her muttering about there always being a war and there always being gods to feed on that. I was trying to make a futility of individual choices 1 at some point, but I don't think I actually got there. And I think Nora did like the opposite of connecting with the local community. So not that one. It's just the 1.
1 is awesome because that gets you an advancement as well. So we'll have 3 next time. Awesome. All righty, that's us. So I guess I know we're kind of running over a bit. Do we have no one that needs to jump off? Lovely. Okay, stars and wishes. I'll turn it over to you folks.
Yeah, I'll go first real quick.
Yeah, go for it.
Yeah, that was a lot of fun and horrifying. I mean, my biggest stars I got to throw out to both John and James. Well, James, like the Tanglelands, what the fuck? And I loved even in the chat, you were like, why did I write this? Which was really, that got me. No, that was horrifying. I think that might have been like some of the most like horrific Silt versus stuff we've seen. Very like not transcending body horror into some really gruesome stuff. I loved it, honestly. Getting big Event Horizon vibes, John, there with where we're going, we don't need eyes. That was great. I really liked that little encounter with one of the, whichever member of the faithful that was, with the barbed wire blindfold. Super messed up, and even worse, of now their organs have transformed and are now pursuing. It's terrible. I love it. That was awesome. A lot of great presentation as always, John. And yeah, James, just the way that the jagged move that you wrote is very fun. and I kind of like how lethal this is. Very dangerous, very Chernobyl, as I've mentioned before. I like it a lot. Yeah, really like the costume, like disguising bit with Frank. Yeah, that was great, David. I love that Frank's getting to do some things that are not in service to others and getting to that feels very appropriate for the character, and I liked it a lot. And what a little stinger, awesome finale bit there with Nora getting the clue. That was also just really awesome. Once more, we have found ourselves thrust into a situation where half of our group is off doing one thing and half it is doing another. And we've swapped the players this time, and I continue to love these dynamics. And Nora and Frank are working as a really fun duo over there, and I'm enjoying watching your scenes immensely. So I'm looking forward to resolving these assignments, especially the clown one, and seeing what this confrontation is going to look like.
Yeah, immediate star as well to just the horror of the Tanglelands. It starts off unpleasant and it just gets worse. And I think that's the most resounding endorsement I can give to anyone who wants to incorporate it into their own campaign. I really enjoyed the splitting off, but then kind of the immediate being driven back together of Dr. Harrow and Vitria when you went into the Tanglelands. And because like I'm really looking forward to the two of you kind of like trying to tackle this together. I think getting that Vitria Dr. Harrow time is really fun. But also like the Tanglelands trying to split you up to sort of take you apart piece by piece is its own pleasure as well. I think it's like kind of the two forces. By your powers combined, you might actually have a chance here, but at the same time, the Tanglelands don't want you to have a chance here. So I also liked the comment earlier about the Tanglelands playing with its food. I just think that's a great horrible thing to think about. I've really enjoyed Frank and Nora's dynamic here. I'm almost getting like Nora is like an older sibling vibe for Frank, where you know you're like, okay Frank, if you feel like you should go and try to do that, like I'll watch over and make sure you don't like hurt yourself doing this. You don't blow up, this stretch of these new high rises or whatever. I thought that was kind of fun, and just like the help with getting a more appropriate costume was good and fun. And I like the like very serious conversation there at the end. I don't know, what I've really enjoyed with this conspiracy so far is every time I feel like I've kind of got a read on what I'm going to expect from it. John, you successfully surprised me with some new little detail or new little move that our enemies have taken. And it's just been really entertaining to see that kind of unfold. I'm really looking forward to the conspiracy. I'm mechanically, because I haven't done a full campaign of Silt versus before, do we have to conclude all of our active assignments before we can access? Because it sounds like this 48 hours kind of like this is going to be the confrontation. So I guess I'll wonder about how that's going to play into how we go through the next few sessions.
So I'm gonna check the wording. I know you can't get any new active assignments. I'm gonna check what it says in the rule book. But one of my wishes was and is going to be, I wish I hadn't said 48 hours specifically because that was off the cuff. And you want it to sound like a genuine threat, but also have enough flex that if you folks want to keep investigating for a while longer, we can make that work. So
I know that the wording in the book is that it's like once all the assignments are resolved, then you introduce the conspiracy. But again, like we can be kind of retconish, loosey goosey about it. Who cares? 48 hours is a really cool line to drop. I don't see that, it's just like, it has whatever it means.
Loosey goosey it is. All right, yeah, sounds good. Sorry, David.
From my perspective, we've kind of played the campaign for narrative effect a lot. We've sort of emphasized that. So I think that's perfectly in keeping with how you've run it already. So.
Yeah, I'm just excited to get into more of it. I think I think this confrontation is going to be a lot of fun. My wish then is for sure to see how these two active assignments play out, and then we'll decide what we're going to do with the big top one. Admittedly, I do want to see what Frank does with a clown. I don't know what that looks like yet. So I think I would love to see what that transpires as.
I'm not allowed to make Nora punch a clown in the face. I'm not. Oh gosh. Yes. Let's just do the mix of stars and wishes because that worked well last time. Star to the just absolutely exhausted. Okay, that happened, and now we walk. That Dr. Harrow and Vitria had to do at the very beginning. Like, yeah, these characters have been through a lot in a short amount of time, so it does make sense that they are just done with it, but also like, well, that happened. Now we have to keep going. Frank's zip line. I am amazed that worked as well as it did. But yeah, it definitely seems like something Frank would come up with. Like, yeah, I've got this helpful little string and I'm gonna make it work. And I think Vitria's reaction to there is all of this metal just growing everywhere. Why did we even bother trying to do this? Of her, I guess, struggle with her personal faith. The Tanglelands is horrific, and I'm looking forward to seeing what Vitria and Dr. Harrow find at the center of it. Cautiously optimistic about the clowns. I hate clowns, which probably has to do with how like everyone who I interact with in the Batman fandom just would like to kill the Joker. Yeah, any other wishes? Oh, I guess seeing what happens when we get to the confrontation and seeing how that's going to play out will be interesting. So, yeah.
I think my absolute favorite, I really loved the whole like Frank and Nora thing. I just thought that whole thing was fantastic, and that Frank got to dress up and that Nora kind of kept him out of trouble and that he got to do the thing, it was just the whole thing was great. That their adventure this session was just great. I just genuinely really, really enjoyed it. It was a great dynamic. Yeah, sorry about the Tanglelands. It's yeah, I said, oh wait, I could do a thing where it's like, what if Clive Barker wrote Sleeping Beauty? That'll be fine, right? Like, yeah, of course that'll be a good idea. But I mean, it's just it's playing out like it feels right. So I'm fairly happy with how it feels in play, which is good. Is that good? I don't know. I hope it is. But yeah, it's been great, and yeah, great presentation from John, and just yeah, in general, great details, and yeah, overall a very good session.
Yeah, I mean, on that thing has been said, but James, yeah, a huge star for Tanglelands. I think what was incredible trying to run it is you know, this is a game that's very good for low prep keeping, where you just, you know, you're glancing at the description, you know what's going to say, and then you start reading it aloud. The Tanglelands is actually kind of bad for that, because you get halfway through a sentence and you go, oh wait, this is horrible. You know, so you do a kind of a double take, a reaction mid-sentence, as with Barb's character description. Just wonderfully gnarly. I think you've touched on this as well, but my huge star for all of you as custodians and players is how very organically and intuitively you bounced off each other's assignments. So, you know, Alex and James, you were so good with both the bleakness and horror of your characters and their gloom at facing this suicidal prospect, but also getting into the really gnarly and absolutely horrible horror descriptions. Loved the stuff you found at the massacre site. But then, Ryan and David, I thought you very smartly picked up on that and provided a counterweight by playing up Frank getting to have a bit of joy, Nora being so wonderfully coolly cynical, and it feeling very much kind of, it's Famous Five at the beach, right? You're literally like digging up treasure at the end to see if there was any corporate malfeasance going on in the old building site. So yeah, I thought all of you tonally were so in tune, and you handled that so well. So thank you. Yeah, that's it. My wish, as mentioned, is I wish I'd been a bit clearer on the confrontation being unleashed, but we can be loosey-goosey. We can figure it out. So yeah, thank you for playing as always and being awesome. And thank you to anyone who's watching.